My daughter refused to let me see my grandchildren. She slammed the door in my face and screamed, "You're dead to me." My hands shook but my voice was calm, "You'll pay for this." Hours later, she found the family photo album on her doorstep, with a page marked, "I'm 63. I'm a retired school secretary, living outside Fort Collins, Colorado. I have one daughter, Mallory. She's 34 now, and she has 3 kids, Owen, 8, Piper, 6, and Ava, 3. I haven't always been the perfect mom, but I gave up everything for that girl. Her dad left when she was 7. Walked out without saying goodbye. We were living in Greeley at the time. He told me one night he was tired of pretending and never came back. She saw him twice after that. I took on 2 jobs. First waitressing, then working at the school district office. I paid every bill. I packed her lunches. I sewed her Halloween costumes even when I had to stay up half the night to do it. Mallory was always cold. Not quiet, cold. She didn't cry like other kids. She got sharp when she was upset, didn't let people close. I told myself it was just her way of protecting herself. She was smart. Smarter than me, probably. But she never wanted to talk about feelings. She just kept things locked up tight. We got by. She graduated with honors, got a scholarship to CSU, and then she moved to Denver for a job in finance. That's where she met Eli. Now, I never liked Eli. There was something about him. He was polite in front of people, but his eyes said something else. Cold like Mallory, but with a smug edge. He talked down to me at their wedding. First time I met him, he called me the lady who raised the boss. I laughed at the time, but it never sat right. She married him anyway. I wasn't asked for my opinion. Hell, I wasn't even asked to help plan the wedding. Just got a card in the mail with the date. I showed up, smiled, sat near the back. Then the grandkids came. And that's when everything got worse. She didn't call me when Owen was born. I saw pictures on Facebook. Just posted like nothing. I sent a text, no reply. I sent gifts, no thank you. Months passed before I even saw the boy. Then came Piper. Then Ava. And every time I tried to be involved, she kept me at arm's length. I wasn't allowed to take the kids anywhere. I had to visit her house and sit in the living room like a guest. I wasn't allowed to post photos. Once, I posted one of me holding Owen at a birthday party and she made me take it down. But I kept trying. I brought gifts, I offered to babysit. I left baked goods on the porch during the pandemic. I swallowed every insult. I didn't complain. Because I loved those kids. Then one day, it all ended. It was a Saturday. I had just gotten off the phone with my friend Cheryl, who told me she saw Mallory and the kids at the zoo. I hadn't even known they were in town. I had picked up some toys the week before, nothing big. A rocket kit for Owen, a doll with a doctor coat for Ava, and a set of paints for Piper. I thought maybe it was time to drop them off. When I knocked on the door, I expected the usual awkward smile, 5 minutes of strained conversation, and maybe a hug from Piper. But the door opened and Mallory looked straight through me. "You need to leave." I blinked. "Is something wrong?" I said, "Leave." "Mallory, what's going on?" "You are not welcome here." I looked down at the bag in my hand. "I just brought a few things," she interrupted me. "You're dead to me." Then she slammed the door in my face. I stood there for a long time. My hand was still on the bag, holding it up. My heart didn't even race. It just cracked. Right there on her porch, in full daylight. My voice came out low. "You'll pay for this," I said. I didn't shout it. I just said it like I was saying a fact. I turned, walked to my car, and drove home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out a box from the garage. It was taped shut, dusty. Inside was our old photo album. I started flipping through it. Pictures of Mallory growing up. Christmas mornings. Her softball team. School dances. Her high school graduation. I stopped on a page I hadn't looked at in years. It was a Polaroid, taken at her 10th birthday party. Mallory was standing next to my brother, Alan. She was smiling, but stiff. His hand was low on her back. Not right. I remembered asking her once, years ago, if anything ever happened with Uncle Alan. She shut down. Said no. Wouldn't talk about it again. But I kept the photo. I also kept the letter. It came in 2005. Alan mailed it to me after we had a falling out. The letter was full of half-said things. He wrote things like, I made mistakes, and I hope she can forgive me, and I never meant to hurt her. No names. No details. But I knew. I had buried it. I had buried all of it. Because Mallory didn't want to talk. And I didn't want to push her. But now, after she told me I was dead to her, I pulled out a red sticky note. Marked the photo. Tucked the letter behind it. I put the album in a paper bag and drove back to her house after midnight. I didn't knock. I left it on the doorstep. Let her find it. The next morning, 7:14 a.m., I got a text. What the hell is this? I didn't answer. Then she called. I didn't pick up. At 11 a.m., more texts. Where did you get that picture? Did you always know? Why would you do this? You're disgusting. Still, I stayed quiet. She wanted to pretend it never happened. She built a whole life on silence. And I was part of that. I let it happen because I wanted to keep her close. But now that she slammed the door, I had nothing left to lose. I let her feel it. A week later, Eli called. From a blocked number. His voice was slurred. You think this makes you a hero, he said. You've wrecked her. She's sobbing every night. I didn't say a word. She's talking crazy, he went on. She said she wants to report things. About her childhood. You filled her head with poison. I said one thing before I hung up, maybe she's finally telling the truth. Then I clicked the call off. 2 weeks later, I got a voicemail from someone at Child Protective Services. It wasn't about me. Someone had called in a report, said the home was unstable. Said the mother was showing signs of breakdown, the father was aggressive. The case was marked for review. I didn't report them. But someone did. Maybe Cindy, her old college friend. Maybe Mallory herself. 3 months later, Mallory showed up at my door. She looked worn out. Eyes red, face pale. I need help, she said. I didn't hug her. I didn't invite her in right away. I stared at her for a long time. Now you want my help? She nodded. We sat at the kitchen table. She told me everything. About Alan. About how she thought no one would believe her. About how Eli always made her feel like she was overreacting. She said she buried it so deep she forgot it was real. Then the photo brought it all back. I hated you for making me look at it, she said. But it forced me to remember. I listened. I didn't say much. The kids were staying with Eli's parents while the investigation ran its course. Mallory had moved out. Started therapy. Filed for separation. She told her therapist everything. Then she told CPS. She moved in with me. For now. Mallory had only been in my house a week when the first letter from Eli's lawyer showed up. It was a custody petition. Full custody. No visitation. He was claiming Mallory was emotionally unstable, exposing the children to false trauma narratives, and mentally unfit to parent. He attached screenshots of old texts where she talked about anxiety. He sent pictures of her prescriptions. There was even a paragraph about me, saying I had a history of delusional accusations. Mallory read it at the kitchen table, shaking. "He's trying to erase me," she whispered. She had been keeping it together, barely. She went to therapy twice a week, started journaling, even picked up part-time shifts at a local bakery. But this letter cracked something. That night, she cried so hard I could hear her from the other room. I didn't go in. She had to go through this. I couldn't save her from all of it. But I did pull out my old file box. I had kept records. Notes. Emails. The letter from Alan. Even a voicemail he left in 2007, drunk, rambling, saying he messed up real bad and asking if she even remembers what happened. I'd never turned it in. I never wanted the family ripped apart. But now? That silence was killing her. I handed her the folder. She flipped through it in silence. "I thought you didn't believe me," she finally said. "I never stopped believing," I said. "I just didn't want to push you into something you weren't ready to face." She looked at the folder again. "Well, I'm ready now." The court date was set for late October. Eli came in wearing a tailored suit, smiling like he was doing us a favor. He brought his parents. His lawyer kept smirking. He thought it would be easy. But Mallory stood up and told the judge everything. Calm, steady, clear. She spoke about Alan. About the photo. The letter. About how she'd been silent for over 20 years and why. She said she had been scared, groomed, and taught to bury pain. She said Eli carried on the pattern, controlling her, isolating her, telling her the past didn't matter. Then we presented the photo. The letter. The voicemail. Eli's lawyer objected. Called it hearsay. The judge listened anyway. Then CPS submitted their own findings. Turns out Eli had a drinking problem. Piper told a caseworker she saw him smash a plate and yell real loud when her mom cried one night. Ava didn't want to go back home. She clung to Mallory like a baby koala when she saw her in the visitation room. That shifted things. Suddenly, Eli didn't look so composed anymore. After court, I got a text from an unknown number. "You think you're so smart. You just ruined your own daughter. I hope you're happy." It was from Eli. I showed it to Mallory. She didn't say anything. But I saw her mouth twitch, like she almost smiled. We thought it was over. But then the past came back again. One evening, I got a call from an old number, my cousin Tammy. We hadn't spoken in 10 years. She told me Alan had passed away. A heart attack. Alone in his RV down in New Mexico. I didn't cry. Mallory didn't either. But 2 days later, she came to me with a small wooden box. "I found this in storage," she said. "It's from when I was 14. It's got letters. Notes I wrote but never gave you." She handed them to me. One of them said, "Sometimes I think you knew what happened, but you didn't want to deal with it. Sometimes I hate you for that. But I also don't want to lose you, so I pretend I'm fine." I sat on the couch and read each word with my chest tightening. "I'm sorry," I said. "You don't have to say that anymore," she replied. "You were the only one who made me face it. That's what saved me." We still didn't have the kids back full-time. The judge ordered a 6-month family observation plan. Supervised visits. Counseling for all 3 kids. Eli got joint custody, but it was being watched close. Mallory was playing the long game now. No more yelling. No more reacting. Just showing up, staying calm, being the stable parent. She was turning into the mother I always hoped she'd be. But the damage was deep. Piper wet the bed sometimes. Owen stopped speaking for almost a month. Ava clung to strangers at daycare. Mallory kept pushing through. I will undo every lie I ever let them grow up inside, she told me one night. Even if it takes the rest of my life. And then something unexpected happened. Mallory's therapist asked if I would come in for a joint session. At first, I thought it was for support. But it wasn't. It was because Mallory had something she needed to say. I didn't want to go to that therapy session. Even though I supported her, even though we'd come a long way, I wasn't ready to sit in a room and get blindsided. But I showed up. I sat in the too-soft chair, clutching my purse like it was the only thing holding me together. Mallory didn't look angry. She looked tired. Her therapist, a woman named Diane, started with small talk. Then she said, Mallory has something she needs to say. And it may be hard to hear. Mallory turned to me. Her voice was low, steady. I blamed you for what happened with Alan. For years. I told myself you knew and ignored it. I let that story grow in my head. It made it easier to not love you. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her. I know now that wasn't fair, she said. You were working 2 jobs. You were tired. And I didn't speak up. But still, there's one thing I have to ask. I nodded. Go ahead. Why didn't you ever press charges? The room got real quiet. Even Diane stopped breathing for a second. I'd asked myself that same question for 20 years. I didn't have proof, I said. And I was scared. Scared of what it would do to you. To us. I thought keeping it quiet meant keeping you safe. Mallory looked down at her hands. You weren't wrong to be scared, she said. But I needed you to be loud. After that session, things shifted again. We talked more openly. Mallory asked questions about the past. Things she'd never asked before. She wanted to know about her dad, why he really left. I told her the truth, he had a second family in Idaho. He told me right before he walked out. I never told her because I didn't want her to hate him. I already do, she said. Then came the next twist. Eli filed a defamation suit. Said Mallory and I had intentionally destroyed his reputation and livelihood with fabricated abuse stories. His lawyer sent another thick envelope. This one included screenshots from Mallory's old therapy posts on a mental health forum. He'd hired a private investigator. Dug into everything. It didn't scare me. It pissed me off. Mallory, though, she panicked. What if I lose custody over this, she said. What if they think I'm just unstable? I told her something I hadn't said out loud in decades. You're not unstable. You're unhealed. That's different. And that man is scared. Scared because you stopped obeying him. Then something happened I never expected. I got a letter in the mail. From a woman named Andrea. Return address was in New Mexico. It started like this: I saw your name in a case summary online. I think we were both hurt by the same man. My name is Andrea M. I was in a relationship with Alan from 2012 to 2016. I had a daughter. She used to cry after he babysat her. I didn't put it together until later. My stomach dropped. I called Mallory into the living room. Showed her the letter. She read it twice. He did it again, she whispered. And nobody stopped him. I reached out to Andrea. We spoke on the phone for 2 hours. Her daughter was in therapy. She never went to the police because she had no hard proof, just trauma, like us. But now? With Alan dead, and our records? She was willing to testify. I gave her our lawyer's number. Then came the biggest shock. Mallory got a call from Owen's school counselor. He had drawn a picture. It was of a tall man yelling. A little girl crying. A door slammed shut. He said the girl was Piper. And the man was the one with the bottles. They brought in a child psychologist. Turns out Eli had been yelling at the kids more than anyone knew. Slamming doors. Throwing things. Telling Owen he was too soft, Piper she was a drama queen, and Ava that crying babies get put outside. That was it. The court reevaluated custody. Mallory got emergency full custody. Eli was limited to supervised visits, pending a full psychological review. He screamed in court. Got escorted out. That night, Mallory sat with me on the porch. It was cold. I made hot tea. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, "I think I understand now." Understand what? Why you stayed quiet. Why I did. Why everything broke. I waited. We were both trying to protect people, she said. But sometimes protecting someone means making them face the truth. Even if it breaks them. I nodded. It's never easy. She looked at me. But it's worth it. A month after the emergency custody change, things felt calmer. Mallory and the kids were living in a small rental about 10 minutes from my place. I helped out, school pickups, groceries, babysitting while she worked shifts at the bakery and took night classes for certification in counseling. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable. But Eli wasn't done. He filed another emergency motion. This time, claiming parental alienation. Said Mallory was turning the kids against him, using manufactured trauma to erase him from their lives. His lawyer tried hard to paint her as vindictive, and me as a manipulator. Mallory's hands shook when she told me about it. I can't do this again, Mom. I don't have the fight in me. You don't have to, I said. I've got one more thing to show them. I met with our lawyer the next morning and gave him everything I'd saved from Alan and Eli. But I also gave him something I'd never shared, not with Mallory, not with anyone. A copy of a CPS report from 2002. Back then, a neighbor at our old apartment complex had called in a report. Said she overheard a strange conversation between Mallory and Alan on the back stairs. CPS came once. I didn't know about it until I got a call a week later. They told me the report was closed because the child did not disclose harm. I had demanded a copy. I kept it, locked in a file box, and never mentioned it again. It was the final piece. Proof that people had suspected something way back then. That something had been wrong. Court was scheduled for a final hearing, this one to decide custody, visitation, and financial support once and for all. The courtroom was packed. Eli brought a new lawyer. He came in confident, cleaned up, like he believed he still had a shot. We brought evidence. Witnesses. The letter from Andrea. Her statement that Alan had groomed her daughter the same way he had groomed Mallory. Mallory's therapist testified. So did Owen's school counselor. So did Piper's daycare supervisor. Then came the kicker. Eli's old boss submitted a written statement, unprompted, about his drinking on the job. About how he once came into a meeting smelling like whiskey and called a female coworker a needy brat. The judge sat through every word. He leaned forward during Mallory's testimony. He scribbled notes while the child psychologist read drawings and statements from each child. And then he spoke. He called Eli a man whose pattern of control, emotional harm, and neglect created an unsafe home for 3 innocent children. He said Mallory had suffered greatly due to generational trauma, mishandled pain, and early abuse, but rose above it to protect her children at great personal cost. He gave Mallory full custody. Supervised visitation for Eli was capped at 2 hours a week, with a court-appointed monitor and no overnight stays. But that wasn't all. He ruled that Eli had to pay all legal fees, back child support, and undergo mandatory counseling before even being considered for unsupervised visits again. Mallory cried right there in the courtroom. So did I. Eli just sat there. Frozen. Like it hadn't registered yet. He tried to speak, but the judge cut him off. This isn't a debate. This is a ruling. The next week, Eli was arrested. Turns out he didn't just have a drinking problem. He had multiple DUIs in other counties that hadn't gone to trial yet. Andrea's statement pushed local law enforcement to look at Alan's background again. Somehow, while combing through old family ties, they found unpaid warrants for Eli tied to harassment and threats against a former coworker in Denver. It was like all the poison he had dumped into everyone else's life had finally caught up with him. Mallory didn't celebrate. She just sat on my couch that night and said, "I'm so tired." "You're safe now," I told her. "No," she said, "but I'm getting there." 6 months later, the kids were better. Owen started smiling again. Piper painted a picture of our whole family, me, Mallory, the three of them, even the dog. She drew Eli in the corner behind a glass wall. I framed it. Mallory got her certification and took a job at a trauma recovery center. She started helping girls who were just like she'd been, quiet, angry, afraid to trust anyone. She told them her story. Not all of it. But enough. One day, she looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You saved me." I shook my head. "You saved yourself." She smiled. "No. You left that album." I didn't forget what she said to me on that porch. "You're dead to me." Those words carved deep. And yes, part of me will always feel pain about how long I waited to confront the truth. I let silence win for too long. But that album? That marked page? That was the day everything changed. And if I could go back and do it again, I'd slam that photo down 10 years sooner. Sometimes the truth destroys everything. But sometimes it sets fire to the people who deserve it most. And from those ashes, you get something better. Not perfect. But real. And finally, safe.